been not a bad day today. Just off home now, the kids are going trick-or-treating.
Shows that evolution in thinking. If we could go to page 6.
Well, just stick out, why don't you, with your tongue?
Mr. Johnson says no time. Although I now can't see it.
That nice run to
Yes, thank you very much. 10:49.
working today.
Johnson Boris, seeing what happened in Italy, we simply have, in capital letters, no time. Over that weekend, the 14th and 15th, there are, as I said, a number of meetings. Sage is asked to model lockdown. You're in touch with Timothy
Whitehaven Cumberland Infirmary, should I say?
He says you've got to move urgently to extreme containment measures, correct?
Yeah.
253942, page 3. You asked him for his views, and he says you've got to move urgently to extreme containment measures. There we are, about a third of the way down the page. I now think that we should move urgently to extreme containment measures. Then, on that Saturday, the 14th of March, at the officials' meeting in the morning, Number 10 was informed that matters, the outbreak was further along the curve than had been thought, and there was a private meeting, was there not, between 9:01 and 9:10 with the Prime Minister, yourself, Lee Kane, Imran Shafi and Stuart Glasborough.
Just pull out, why don't you?
Where you wheeled in your whiteboard and you took the Prime Minister through the problem.
Yep.
In light of what Mr. Kane said earlier, can you make plain, please, though, that it doesn't appear as if any decision was made during the course of the weekend for a lockdown. It is that there was a change in the strategic approach of the government.
Starting to get dark now, 4 o'clock.
That there had to be a change of approach.
Time of year.
Much more stringent measures were likely to be required, but no actual decision was made to impose a national.
Day's gone quick today.
Correct. That the way I would describe it is that we had the conversation with the PM on Saturday morning. We told him our concerns that Plan A was heading for a catastrophe. I then, after that, spoke to Patrick Vallance and articulated my concerns and my ideas about a Plan B that was sketched on the whiteboard. Patrick Vallance had clearly changed his mind in various ways as well, as I referred to in my text with the PM, and I agreed with Patrick that we would organise a meeting.
Right, listening to on the radio, he's lying gets over the COVID pandemic. Carry on.
Articulate a different way forward, but I was very keen.
Totally lying to the general public and all that.
For obvious reasons.
And to be clear, at the morning meeting on the 14th, on the Saturday, you said need to do in the next 72 hours to avoid NHS lockdown. And there was a debate, including Michael Gove MP, in which he said, go now.
They're full of
You know that
shite,
from
aren't they?
the notes of that meeting kept by Mr. Shafi.
Yes, I remember him saying it. I remember Gove saying that, sorry.
On the Sunday, and in fact throughout the weekend and then onwards on the Monday, there was a considerable debate also on a WhatsApp group titled CSA, CMO, MAT, PM, DOM, concerning the need to accelerate the social distancing plans. In essence, do you agree?
Yes.
And there was a debate, including Mr. Hancock, about the need to ramp up testing, not stop testing, a need to continue contact tracing and introduce self-contact tracing. And I think he assured you at 7:30 on the 14th of March that both of those were in hand.
That'd be good if I can make these lights.
Vaguely, yes.
On the Sunday,
It's lucky.
there were further meetings, and the Prime Minister held a meeting with his closest advisors in which you summarised the discussion from the day before and about the need to move to Plan B. Was a decision about the government's approach able to be taken at that meeting? meeting, or did the Prime Minister want to confer further with the Chief Medical Officer and the Governmental Chief Scientific Advisor?
So I'm not exactly sure which meeting you referred to. You said Sunday.
On the Sunday.
Yeah, on the Sunday they were. So on the Sunday, I met with Patrick and Chris. Certainly with Patrick, possibly with Chris, before the meeting with the PM. Then at the 5 o'clock, I think it was, that meeting was with Patrick and with the PM.
At that meeting, did anybody express anger or irritation or annoyance at the view then being expressed by Sir Patrick Vallance as to the need to change course?
I would say there was a great deal of confusion at that meeting, because in terms of the reactions to it, because of course Patrick and I were essentially suggesting that the original herd immunity plan had to be ditched. There was anger after that meeting expressed by people in the Cabinet Office and at DHSC, reflecting the fact that they were essentially blindsided. Of course, as far as they knew, as far as the people in the Cabinet Office and DHSC knew, Plan A was still in place. Plan A was still in place, as you can see from the record. Matt Hancock said on the Saturday morning, on the 14th, to the official meeting, we've got to, quote, stick with the plan, unquote. So when Patrick and I wielded whiteboards and said, essentially, we've got to go down a different route on the Sunday evening, I was told after that Patrick Vallance was reprimanded by various people and that there was a very angry reaction in the Cabinet Office and DHS.
In particular, was he reprimanded by the Permanent Secretary at the DHSC for having, as the Permanent Secretary appeared to think, advocated a change of direction without the Permanent Secretary's knowledge?
That is my understanding, and you can see from messages on the 18th that the Permanent Secretary at DH still was behind the curve on this whole discussion.
Because he was still talking about one-wave strategy, talking about why the NHS would be overtopped, to use his word.
Correct, on the afternoon of the 18th. So I think, just for complete clarity, it's a big mistake to think that there was a kind of clear moment. Right? This was all complete chaos. There was informal meetings on the Friday, there was formal and informal meetings on the Saturday, there was formal and informal meetings on the Sunday. There was Patrick and I basically articulating a plan B. There's the PMs thinking about it. There's the Cabinet Secretary and other people in the system suddenly going, what the hell's going on? Are we ditching plan A? What the hell? So it's important not to think that there was a sort of, that this was all very clear and then suddenly everyone left the meeting and everyone was aligned. It was a very chaotic process, that transition.
So chaotic was it that data and whiteboards and information that you were using to make your point were themselves out of date. So if we could have 48313, your letter to the inquiry at page 39. This is a screenshot that you've provided of charts from the NHS showing how beds, the bed capacity of the NHS would be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
That information, it'll be page 40 then, please. I think I must have got the wrong reference. There are NHS graphs which were shown to you and which you deployed in order to show the crisis facing the NHS that weekend, in which the peak on those graphs was still being shown as being in June of 2020.
So no, that's slightly confused. There's two different sets of graphs. There is a set of graphs that came from Cobra.
That bike light, man, you can hardly bloody see that.
Which was showing a peak in June.
Wearing get dark clothes and all. I'd want to be lit up like a Christmas tree, me, like.
The NHS and plus, essentially from Stephen's office, the ones I referred to earlier, which was shown to us on the Thursday the 12th. If you look at the photo of me in the room with the PM on Saturday the 14th, you can see those NHS graphs are the ones that are in front of him. So part of what that meeting was about was showing him, here's what the Cabinet Office and the CCS are all planning on the basis of in DHSC. But here is the actual NHS graphs, which Stevens has provided and which the warners are saying is much more accurate.
What was it?
These completely mismatch.
Because the first set of graphs showed and continued to show that the peak would be in June. And of course, information had by then already been received in Downing Street that we were way off the trajectory. It was coming sooner than expected.
Correct, and as a measure of how bad that was, even after this was realised and we had these conversations, and we say to people, these are the graphs from the NHS, these CCS graphs are completely wrong from COBRA. These graphs kept appearing
Oh, noisy.
for 2 more weeks after this. So it was kind of, somehow it got embedded in the system. It was very hard to de-embed it. In fact, they were still appearing after we'd even decided to make the first, to do the first lockdown.
Now it's tell us slow, coach.
Now, during the course of that week, commencing
Think we're putting your lights on, mate, and all.
on Monday, the 16th of March, there were urgent debates and there was rapid consideration of the need to shut schools.
Look at this daft twat there, yeah.
A number of texts and messages. You called for London
You
to
stupid
be
git.
locked down to stop the NHS collapse in London in 15 days. There was
70 mile an hour dual carriage when he pulls out.
Whether or not practically a lockdown could
Absolute
be put in
prat,
place,
like.
as well as whether it should be national or London first and then the rest of the country behind that. What was the Prime Minister's general position in relation to whether or not this was a course that would have to be contemplated and pursued?
He oscillated through the course of the week. I think that he, like me, in the week of the 9th, his bad sense was telling him that there's something going wrong. I think he'd been very alarmed by the chickenpox parties when he heard the most senior official in the country use this. It wasn't a blame about Mark, but it was some signal that who the hell was briefing Mark this ideas like this. So he was concerned when we talked him through on Saturday and said we've got to ditch plan A and shift to plan B and try and build our way out of it. He was certainly open, but you know, like me and like the ones and others, he was, you know, somewhat dumbstruck that we were in this situation. And of course, there was no plan for lockdown, so he was also perfectly reasonable to say, how the hell do we lock down when there isn't a plan for lockdown? And I've been told for the last 8 weeks that any lockdown is impossible. Any lockdown is mad because it just means an even worse second wave. Now suddenly you and others are saying we're going to have to lock down. What the hell's going on?
In your statement, you refer to a number of difficult discussions with the Prime Minister because of the way in which he swung, he backed and veered from taking the view that there had to be a lockdown to taking the view that there should not.
Somebody else with no lights on.
Careful and measured considerations of the options.
Yeah, 95% of driving's common sense.
To use your
It feels like tonight 90% of the drivers didn't have common sense.
Well, I think to be fair to the PM, you know, it's hard to overstate. You know, the last time anyone had been in that building in a situation like that was literally Churchill. It was an extraordinary situation, and the PM had repeatedly, you know, extraordinary meetings. So he suddenly had the cabinet secretary coming in saying, "Are you absolutely sure about this? The cabinet are going to revolt. This is all going to kick off." He had the Chancellor come in and say that one markets might puke and we might have a massive 2008 style financial crisis with the Secretary of the Treasury. You know,
slow down, Mr. Cummings.
there were a lot of crazy things of people suddenly just coming into a study saying wildly different things. So although I have been very critical of him, I think it's important to understand in this context that he was being buffeted very strongly by different forces. There was me and one set of people making one argument that we'd basically been kindwashed by disastrous group thinking we had to change path. You had people at the Cabinet Office saying that, you had people in the Cabinet saying the other, and you had the Treasury people warning him that if we went down this path, then we might provoke another parallel disaster.
And as the days unfolded, he backed and veered from supporting a lockdown to
back there immediately. But once again, apologies for any language that you have heard. But myself and Claire have got the reins now from John, and we'll speak to you shortly.
Sort of cascading through the system of how we cannot do Plan A. Obviously, when you look at what Plan A means and also how fast it's all going to unfold, we've got to shift. So there was a sort of huge institutional shift over the course of that week. And part of what I was referring to in that message was by the 19th it was totally obvious that there was going to be a lockdown, and my fear then was that if the PM suddenly trolleyed back, then all it would do was cause more needless confusion. If you imagine how hard it was to ditch Plan A and shift to Plan B, if the PM had then started saying to key people, oh, hang on, we might move back to Plan A again, we were all holding our heads.
And it would cause